All right, here we are, another session. My name is John Matty, and I know I was the one looking as the presenter, but that is not true. So we have Jake DeSantis that works with me as well.
Everybody.
And so the two of us are going to go ahead and present on Microsoft Hyper-V and VDI security. First thing I do want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank everybody across Adobe Connect. We sound okay? Coming? Okay.
How's mine sound? Okay.
And I especially want to thank all the folks from SOS and security and these security talks. It's just fantastic that they're doing these types of things to get people out and start to collaborate about with what technologies we're using. And so it's some exciting times there. We are using the Microsoft Hypervisor, and that's what we're going to talk about here in our security series. There is some fantastic work being done in VDI space. So a gentleman here from ITS, that's awesome. They are doing some great things. There's other departments that we know about that are using the Microsoft Hypervisor, VMware View, and other technologies, and we just love it because now we can come together on these things and just kind of show what's working, what's not working. And it's Jake and I's goal in the Microsoft world just to kind of nail down, give you that snapshot of kind of what we've been doing the past year in building our new infrastructure. Having said that, we're going to move forward. We kind of have two slides here, objectives and goals. They kind of run hand in hand. We're going to give you a little bit of overview of the network infrastructure, just what we've been doing. Again, what is it that we are running, what kind of equipment, what software, where is this stuff located. Oh, okay, just checking my audio here. And we'll talk a little bit about RDS and VDI technology as a whole, and why Server 2012. That's a big one for us. We are totally committed to Server 2012. We have found some awesome things in Server 2012, and Jake's going to talk a little bit about that later, and why we are migrating to that. Endpoint devices, that's been a long road for us. You know, we've been kind of toying with VDI for 3 years, and you know, every time you think you have an endpoint device, or what am I going to stream my virtual desktop across, you find glitches, and you find hoops and hurdles that you got to go through. So we're going to talk. We finally kind of have a standard endpoint device that we're using, but we know we don't want to put too much emphasis on it too, because these type of things just change quite a bit. Policies, that's huge. We're going to talk a little bit about policies a little bit later. We've had some serious talks with a lot of people about, you know, what they expect from VDI and the virtual desktop. And it's nice to be here at this security series because a lot of that is based around security. A lot has happened in the past year and a half that we know of. A lot has affected us being from the office of the president. And so we were challenged. What can we do differently to start securing data and securing what we're doing and make it better and all those type of things. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, which kind of goes to the next one, desktop virtualization security benefits. And then we're going to discuss lessons learned kind of at the end from where we are now, from what we've done, and what we're going to be everything we're going to be talking about is the stuff that we're going to be migrating to in about 2-3 months from now. So next slide just talks about goals. Jake's just going to talk a little bit about those.
So the goals of the presentation today, and I guess our discussion, first and foremost is to emphasize security. That's what we're invited here to do today, and since it's a security series, that's what we're going to do. We're going to provide you with a snapshot of our current environment, as well as the environment that we're going to over in the Colo building. We'll get into detail about that a little later. We're going to share some of our experiences with making VDI more secure, more robust, more accessible, and efficient, as well as discussing benefits or business practices and policy changes due to recent events. And as you all can imagine, it's pretty expansive. Yeah. And also, during the presentation, don't be afraid to raise your hand, ask a question, especially on Adobe Connect. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
Will you be discussing virtual as well as virtual desktop?
So,
Running applications, you know.
So the question was, will we be discussing virtual applications and virtual desktops? So we are not going to get into the application side too much. We know that's another huge area coming for us.
Right.
There's a lot of third-party vendors out there that are writing software for application virtualization. We've kind of standardized on the Microsoft platform, which right now uses gold images, user disk, that type of thing. So we're going to put more emphasis on the VDI and how we're building those out in Server 2012 and those images that we're using for departments.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, so
We're going to jump into the network infrastructure.
yeah, so this is probably a really good spot just to kind of take a real quick snapshot. So anybody that's heard me speak before, you kind of know that we're based out of Old Main. So we have a server room in Old Main, which is not good. It's just not a whole lot of security there. And so as we started building out our new infrastructure, we wanted to move things to the colo, to the computer building from all the different things that they've done there. I'm going to put a plug in for those guys. Brett Dixon, Mark Campbell, who am I missing?
Gib.
They're fantastic. From the time that we take our equipment, you know, we have servers that are going to show up on the loading dock. Those guys take it from us, rack it, we give them a diagram, talk about how we want, and they go ahead and they do all of the wiring and that type of thing. So there's a lot of security that we are gaining from moving our new infrastructure to the colo. The rack that you see there is actually the one rack that we have over there now. So another quick snapshot. Right now we are Server 2008, R2, streaming Windows 7 desktops in our current infrastructure in Old Main. That's what we're doing today. From this slide that you see here, moving forward, we're going to talk about our new infrastructure, of which I just talked about a little bit, with the first being that our production is coming out of the colo. So having said that, moving into servers, we've got 5 Dell PowerEdge 720 servers that we're using for both VDI and VMs. So currently, in our current production, we kind of have 2 clusters going, one for virtual servers, one for VDI. We see all the technology and benefits coming from the Microsoft hypervisor and Server 2012 that we can now mix those 2 together. So we're dropping off just a little bit of expense on, you know, how many servers that we really need. So we're combining the 2. Again, Jake's going to talk a little bit later about Hyper-V 2012. I would just say really quickly, Hyper-V 2012 is free to everybody across the world, just in case you don't know that. We have the whole campus agreement, right? We know that. But we did not even load data center because Hyper-V 2012, and we use all core, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, is free to the world. It's built for that. It's slimmed down for that. The security built into that so that we use it. The servers themselves, 8 cores, standard 128 gigs on each one of the 5 hosts. And we do have a 710 as operating as a domain controller as well. And then kind of bring it together, 14 Intel 1 gig NIC ports for the VDI servers, 4 for iSCSI. I have a diagram about 3 or 4 slides from here that I'm going to show you where it kind of brings it all together. And then 2 teamed Intel for management, and then 1 for the failover ports. So that's kind of our rack out at the colo and the server portion of it. Next one's going to be we're using the Dell EqualLogic SANs. And on those SANs, we're using the 4100 series. I know a lot of folks across the campus are using Dell EqualLogics. We're very happy with those. There are 24 drives, 300 gig SAS drives, dual controllers, and 2 iSCSI ports per controller. We're using RAID level 50 for all of our environment. And we're using the SandBlock level replication. So the cool thing about the EqualLogics, right, is you can do that file replication at the hardware level. And so for us, and we'll go into a little bit here, that we have these same 2 EqualLogics sitting in Old Main. So production, colo, 2 there. DR is going to be Old Main until we get a DR site. Till Penn State gets a DR site, then we'll finally move that little bit of infrastructure that we have in Old Main, which we call DR, out. And so we're able to do that file level replication between the 2.
Just wanted to add real quick why we went with EqualLogics. In our current infrastructure on Server 2008 R2, we were using Dell EqualLogic MD 3200s and 1200s. With those, we found that the performance there, as far as reads and writes, when you're doing VDI, you need like high IOPS for everything. We found that it wasn't just efficient enough for what we wanted to give our users on our network. So after doing a lot of research and working with the Dell representatives, Dan Moroz and Dave Toshak, we were suggested to use the EqualLogics. And there's a lot of security built into it too that we can go into a little later.
Yep.
Yeah, Peggy?
Did you update your network as well? Although that's part of the reason you go to network.
Expand on that. When you say updated network, meaning?
Well, the actual network infrastructure has to be robust as well as just your IOPS.
Yes.
Because
Right.
if you can't get out of the
Oh, correct.
building,
Yes.
it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to talk about the switches next.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, it goes hand in hand. Yep. Okay. Next piece is just the switches. Pretty standard on the switches. We actually have 4 switches, or even 6 actually. It shows here 2 Dell Power Connects. And again, the next slide is going to kind of bring this all together in a diagram that you can see how we have everything interconnected. But we're using these failover Dell Power Connects for production, and then we have 2 just for iSCSI, and then we have 2 back in Old Main for the iSCSI. So let me just quick over there to the next slide so we can pull it together for you. There you go.
Yep,
Okay.
let's go.
Okay. So you can see the co-location building. They are actual pictures of what we have over there. And just kind of start at the top. We just have a checkpoint firewall going out of the colo. And you can see the nice wiring that the folks do over there. I mean, literally, they are very, very meticulous about their wiring and how things are done and the proper cabling and making sure that everything is done to the T and labeled for us. So that was awesome. So the 2 top switches that you see are for production, and then the 2 bottoms are for iSCSI traffic that go to those SANs. Yes, Patty?
Is it private fiber between you and Colo?
Yep. So what we have is, one second, there's a question coming from Dell Connect that I'll get in just a second. So if you can see the diagram, it doesn't show up real good, but there are 2 private fibers going from the colo to Old Main. One we use 10 gig production, and the other 10 gig iSCSI. So this traffic is totally segmented there. Kind of in the middle, you see the servers, and then down at the bottom there are SANs. Looking over to the right side on Old Main, you can see that first 10G production fiber coming into our Cisco switch that we have over there. Our Cisco Catalyst is kind of our main core switch that we use coming out of Old Main. So there's where the 2 productions are tied together, colo to Old Main. Then you see the other one just below it is a 10G iSCSI fiber to replicate the SAN traffic. Looking to the right, again, just the servers that are over there. We can kind of narrow down the servers that we're using for this infrastructure. Eventually, all of this is going to be in a DR location, wherever that's going to be slated for. And then the SANs are located on the right to the bottom. 2 other buildings that we support. There's an office that we support, the Penn Stater. We just have Ethernet fabric going out there, which is fantastic if anybody's using that. It's just as if they're sitting in Old Main or in the colo. And also in this building here, we actually have a Ethernet fabric to the Ryder building. Penn State backbone, I kind of put that in there. Really, the Penn State backbone should go across that whole diagram, but it just fit a little bit better in there. One quick thing I'll say here, and we'll get to it in a little bit. So if we're streaming our virtual desktops from the colo, because colo is production, and people are sitting in Old Main, and the iSCSI fiber gets cut, we don't care because it's just replication traffic going back and forth. If they cut, I did say iSCSI, then I hope I did. And then if we cut the production fiber, that's where, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself, that's where we're going to change the VLAN back in Old Main so that our endpoints are on an internal VLAN only. They'll go out to the web, and then they'll be able to do HTTPS out of Old Main and back down into the colo. So that's that. People always say, then what happens if a bomb hits the co-location building? Well, I don't know. We do have some things covered there, but I'm a little scared if that happens.
Yeah.
So that ties all that together. Okay, so a question from Adobe Connect. Oh, I did. Very good. Thank you. Okay, moving forward. And Jake's going to talk a little bit about RDS VDI technology and what these roles, what kind of roles do we have set up to get this infrastructure in place?
Right. So really the RDS technology that we're using is built into server 2012, 2008 R2. You don't need any extra software or anything like that to install on top. There's 2 roles and about 4 features, I believe, or more. There's remote desktop services, and under that role is most of the other roles. Yes?
What about licensing?
So the question was licensing.
Yeah. The licensing is coming up here now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's coming up.
And we're going to talk about that later.
So there's remote desktop services, and that's kind of like outlying role for everything. And the web server IIS is used for web access. So our users can go either using a RDP file, or they can open Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, and log into the web access server and bring down their VDI from there, or remote apps. The features are RD web access, like I just talked about. That was with the web server. The RD session host, that's if you're hosting, it's formerly terminal services.
Server, yeah.
So if you're using one server for all of your users to log into and on their own profiles, you can do VDI that way too. It's not really what we're doing at all, but it's an option. You also can publish remote apps from there. The real security aspect of all these features and roles is the RD gateway. You can control what resources can be accessed on your network with the gateway. You can control what users can access those resources through your gateway settings. And it also provides the SSL and HTTPS connection when you're using web access. You have a question?
Yeah, web access. Did you have to do any jury rigging to get web access to work with Microsoft?
So the question was if we had to do any jerry rigging, quote, to get web access working. And not particularly. I mean, it's a pretty smooth, it's a pretty...
Another benefit to Server 2012.
Yeah.
And its features. Yep.
No, the new licensing with Penn State's excellent. So we were able to get licenses for all that, SSL certificates and things like that is what I meant. The connection broker has a little bit of play in the security of all this. It manages what pool you connect to when you create a VDI collection. It's based off of AD, so it goes by your user account. It links you to a VDI pool or personal desktop and connects you to it. Once that happens, the broker kind of drops off, and the gateway handles the rest of the traffic. And then the licensing server, like Peggy was asking about, it's $17 per user or device
count.
So it's decently inexpensive. Is there any other questions?
Do you mostly use device or user?
The question was if we use device or user CALs. We're using user CALs.
Yep, so they can log into any device.
Yep.
Right.
So why did we go with Server 2012 in our new infrastructure? And there's just so many benefits as far as management, performance in VDI, server performance in general. If you could see that picture right there, it's kind of small. But you open the new server manager console, and you have access to see how your AD is doing, how DHCP is doing, how DNS is doing. And it's shown by like red and green colors. If you have red, there's something wrong. Right there in the bottom corner, you can see that one's red. And it shows that 3 services are having issues. So it's, this isn't in core. This is the management console. And this can be installed on with the RSAT tools in Windows 8. So you can just remotely manage any server that's on your network from your Windows 8 machine. That's what we've been doing. Like John said earlier, we have Server Core installed on all of our hosts, our virtualization hosts. And we manage them all from here. You can access Failover Manager from there, Hyper-V from there, IIS,
Essentially
DHCP,
any of the roles
DNS,
and features that are installed.
But what about authentication and using these tools?
Right, you have to authenticate with a domain account.
Yep.
Just like you would if you were logging into the server to manage it directly.
Okay, so you can just do a run out.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep, exactly. I think I covered everything there.
Yep. So just to touch on that real quick,
Yep.
we have 5 hosts. You install Server Core and you install a bunch of roles and features on each one of those, as soon as you add those to Server Manager, then it automatically identifies what roles are on each one of those hosts and populates it for you. And so you're now managing everything from one GUI applet, even though we're running core.
So, for instance, you'll see this image just popped up here. We added our RDS, which is our broker, our RDG, our gateway, and we were presented with the Remote Desktop Services plugin for Server Manager. So from there, you get a visual view and the overview of how your virtual infrastructure is set up, or how your RDS infrastructure is set up. It's small, but you see collections up here, and then you see the collections underneath. You can manage your collections, add virtual machines to a collection, remove them, destroy a collection. So it's all right there in your Windows 8. You don't have to log into a server, type in your credentials all the time. It's nice.
So when Jake talks about collections, that's just what we're doing. We are one-to-one VMs right now, and now moving to the new system, we're going to the pooled. And so we can just build images per department. Say we have 5 different departments, they have a little bit different images. We'll build those, what they call gold images, and then we'll say, hey, there's 30 people in the department. It will build that collection automatically from that one gold image. Yes? No, so the question was, do we use roaming profiles? In Server 2012, using Hyper-V, it's now called UserDis. And so instead of, if everybody remembers the old roaming profiles, which I could never get to work correctly, it was all stringed of files and folders. Now it's just one file. And so and it's on our file share, locked down on the file share. So the user logs in, it picks up their user disk, comes over, marries it to the collection, which again, all those, if there's 30 VDI sitting in that collection, it's just going to pull one that's available. It marries the two, and off they go. When they update their backgrounds and screensavers and stuff like that, that gets saved through the user disk. When they log off, and I know, so we're going to talk about some of this, but when they log off, then that VDI they were logged on does a revert, goes right back to where it was when they logged in.
Right.
Question on Adobe Connect? No. Okay. Question from Peggy.
What's your AD functional level?
Well, we're building. By the way, we're building a whole new domain with a whole new domain name, so it's 2012.
Oh, you're going to be AD 2012?
Yeah.
Well, I will impose on that. It's 2008 R2 for now, only because we will be transitioning to 2012 functional level. We did 2008 R2 because we'll be migrating from 2008 R2. We're going to migrate a lot of our users and things.
So we have a full level of trust set up right now, a two-way trust set up from our current environment to this new environment, so that we can. Correct. Right. Right. So that we can get all the securities. And also with the realm. Correct.
Yeah.
Once we get everything over, then Jake is correct. We'll go from 2008 R2 up to Server 2012.
Yep. So we just want to talk about a little bit why we went with Server Core on our Hyper-V hosts. First of all, and the basis of this whole conversation is it's more secure. There's a smaller attack area. What Hyper-V Server has installed on it role-wise, or able to be installed on it role-wise, is just Hyper-V and just clustering, failover clustering. You can also access some of those GUI things like the iSCSI initiator if you're using EqualLogic or anything that uses an iSCSI network. And you really rely on, maybe more or less rely on PowerShell scripts in Server Core than you would in a data center, full GUI. Although you don't have to completely rely on that because you have the RSAT tools in Windows 8, where your server manager's there. You can install rules on servers from Windows 8 in your server manager in the RSAT tools.
Right. So those days of logging into each server, implementing a role or feature are gone. You can do it all in Server Manager.
And is it updating through WSOS using Fence?
We are not, actually. We can. We just haven't. We didn't choose to do that. We're updating. Well, and this is interesting. It's right here. The clusterware updating. That's something new in Server 2012. Clusterware updating allows you to update all your servers, all your virtualization hosts.
Yep.
Not really at once, but in a kind of an orchestrated manner. So it'll put the first one into maintenance mode, migrate all the VMs that are on it, update it, restart it, bring it up, and then do the same for the rest of them all the way down. So you don't have to do anything. You hit start, let it go overnight or whatever. We did it the other day while we were working through our Windows 8 VMs, and we didn't notice anything at all. So it's really nice. The other thing that's built into Server 2012 is Hyper-V Replica. As John was saying, we have a cluster. Well, I don't know if you said a cluster, but we have a cluster at Old Main, and we have a cluster at the colo. They're both Server 2012. With Hyper-V Replica, we can have a VM running at the co-location building, and for DR, that VM is replicated across to Old Main every like 5 minutes or so. So if something happens with the colo, we just hit promote this VM as the primary, turn it on, and we have our file server backup.
Right, and that they can do that for us. So Hyper-V replication, replicates that VM that's doing SQL. If we have a disaster, we can just say enable this to be primary. Then it comes up. So Hyper-V replication does all of the things that we kind of have some intelligence built into, right? The virtual machines and that type of thing, and then we rely on the EqualLogics to do just the file transfer type stuff in the user disk.
Yep. And the storage spaces is another thing in Server 2012. It's not something that we're using, but if you're just starting out and you want to kind of test around in Server 2012, you can use storage spaces. You can use local storage as a cluster shared volume,
right? If
you want to.
USB drive.
USB drive, yeah.
Doesn't matter.
External hard drive.
Would you do that for production? No, but for testing, it's fantastic.
Yep. The other thing I was going to say is that with the PowerShell stuff, the PowerShell 3.0 is really powerful. I just want to show you real quick. So for building commands in PowerShell, if you use the show command, it'll bring up a dialog box and it'll help you build commands that you want to use in PowerShell.
Can you display it across there?
Oh, sorry. It's on the wrong screen. There we go.
Okay.
So this is the show command dialog box. If I wanted to make like a new user in AD, is that it?
Yeah, new AD user, yep.
This is so hard to do.
So why Jake's doing that? So kind of the old PowerShell's kind of gone by the wayside. This is more of a GUI PowerShell that you can actually start using when you just don't want to learn all those PowerShell commands. But the cool thing is when you install Server Core, inside of Server Core, it has those things like the iSCSI GUI and the NIC GUI. Those are still built into Core, so you can get the thing up and running. Then from there, you can either go to PowerShell or go to Server Manager. If you're just after that, if you've got the networking component set up, you're just going to go to Server Manager and everything's GUI from there. You're just going to add anything that you want to do to that core. So we really don't even use a lot of PowerShell commands.
Right.
It's really just to get started. That's it.
I'm going to the next one here. John, you want
Okay, yeah, endpoint devices. So for the last, ever since we started VDI, it's always you work on these endpoint devices. What do we use? We're streaming virtual desktops now, and everybody wants to take the endpoint device and make it small, have it be a smaller footprint. Well, we finally found something that we can kind of standardize on. Our endpoint devices have been the fat client for all the way up until 6 months ago or so. We're just repurposing the Dell or whatever fat client that they have sitting on their desk so that we didn't have to buy anything. And for the last 3 years, we haven't purchased any desktops at all. We just kept repurposing. We're using WinTPC or Windows Thin PC. It's just a really scaled down version of Windows to allow you to go in and kind of tailor a little bit for VDI. And so on the fat client, we send an image across that has WinTPC on it that we configured. It boots up to an RDP prompt, and then from the RDP prompt, it just goes in and starts pulling their VDI across. That's what we've been doing to this point.
So if you're running these fat clients, you still have to update them.
We still had to image them, yes. Yeah, but it's a lot less. So, and that's the thing we're going to get into. On the endpoint devices, we're trying to get that lower footprint. So there's a company called XI3. If you go to xi3.com, a little plug for them. These are the boxes that we start standardizing there, which has dual monitors, low wattage, that type of thing. But we always say you have to be careful because what's good today is just not going to be that great tomorrow. And we realize that. But at some point, we have to go with something because these our old desktops are just old. And so this is a device that we have found that works really, really well streaming the virtual desktop. So back to managing them. In this particular device, we want it so if one breaks, you can just plug it in, right? These are all on internal VLAN. All of our endpoint devices are on internal VLAN, cannot get out to the internet unless we had a fatality. We can switch the VLAN, so it does. On that internal VLAN, what are some of the things that we want to know about this device, like the serial numbers of these devices? And maybe because we are using Windows Thin PC, maybe there's a new RDP client or something. So we may have a situation where we do want to push something out. And so at that point, we're just using Configuration Manager for that, to manage them. But again, manage them means we're not doing a whole lot. We're just putting them on the network. It's being tailored in Configuration Manager automatically, and then we can look up that little bit of information about those that we want, or push something if we had to.
Does anybody have any weird peripherals that they want?
We'll get into that. Yep, Peggy talked about weird stuff, plugging in USB drives and that type of thing. And yeah, we'll touch that. Yep. But yeah, because we're trying to get a small footprint, our goal is to keep the data behind the firewall at all times. And we're really coming down to no exceptions, which we'll talk to in just a minute. So we talked about SCCM managing them, no internet access. Yeah, USB, clipboard, that kind of thing is all turned off. Okay, policies. Impact of recent events, litigations hold. So again, we've had a lot. We worked with security a lot on a lot of different things, and this is where, we've been challenged to again make that data behind the firewall, make it stay there, and this is the type of things that we've been working on. They asked. It calls for a closer look of our data. We reevaluated everything that we were doing, plan and implement for the future preparedness. And I'm just going to go to the next slide because we really start talking about security unless Jake wants to say something there.
Well, we had a question on Adobe Connect. Do you want to go ahead with that one?
Sean asked, are you using KMS for activation on the WinTPC?
We are not using KMS, we're using Mackeys for activation on those.
Okay, good question.
Yeah.
Yep. And you were going to say something? Or?
No, just...
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, more endpoint devices. So the two that I showed prior, the XI3 box and the FAT clients, which were slowly getting off the network, laptop policies. We have a very strict laptop policy now. And again, everything that I'm talking about went to the highest level within Old Main, and they gave us our stamp of approval because they were the ones coming to us saying, we really, really need to start working with security and keep this stuff behind the firewall. And that's fair with everything that's been going on. So our laptop policy in a whole is if someone from a department says, I want so-and-so, I've approved them to have a laptop, we tell them fine. We tell them the laptop policy, which is simply we take the laptop, we buy low-end laptops. Again, we strip them down to, they have Windows 8 on, but all of the Metro-style tiles are stripped off. The store, all these things are stripped off. So when they turn that laptop on, it's basically, again, coming up to a Windows 8 desktop, and then they're going to click on the RDP client to go into the virtual desktop. So that really, so there again, we want it so that if the laptop gets stolen, anything happens to it, we don't have to worry about that there was data on there. And so they have the typical, what if I'm on an airplane and these type of things. And so, we've pushed them. We say, hey, if you're going to go to a conference and those type of things, please be a little bit more prepared. We are looking into right now, kind of like air cards and that type of thing, to give them that wireless. And I will say, even on airplanes anymore, you can't get wireless. Mm-hmm. There's a cost, but you can do it. So we are finding, because we have been on 100% virtual desktops for the past year, we are finding that this is not a problem. People love the fact that they can get to the virtual desktop from anywhere, and 90+% of the time, they are somewhere where they can get some form of Wi-Fi and that type of thing. The other thing that this has done is when we explain to them what we're going to do, if the university buys this device, we've had two very, very high level people just say, well, if that's the case, I'll just buy my own. And we were like, fantastic. took the cost off the university. We don't have to manage it, touch it. We don't have to do anything to it. And we provide an RDP client or some type of app to get into their virtual machine, whether it's iPads, right? Pretty much any device that you can come up with. We either have a client or they go to the, if it's an iPad, they're going to go to the store and download the iTap client, that type of thing. So pretty much on anything that they want to buy, we will support them to get into their virtual desktop. And that's all we have to support. So that's been really good for us.
The other thing, as far as management on those, we're still using BigFix or TEM to manage those, just to keep track of, how many we have, serial numbers, IP addresses and things, MAC addresses and things like that. And through TEM, you can wipe the machines. And not that we would need to really do that, but I'm sure we would have to if one did get stolen.
And the policy on the virtual desktop would disable the USB on their device so that they couldn't copy something down to the USB.
Correct.
So the question.
Yeah. So the question was, is USB redirection and all these redirected turned off because they're going through the gateway and the policies are set on the gateway to turn all those things off, and the answer is yes. Now all that stuff is turned off.
Their USB when they're just using their laptop.
Right. So we still send stuff through email, right? We can't stop people using email and putting attachments on, and then you have those large attachments. We've started to use ITSS File Locker. I know it's in test, but it works fantastically. And so we're relying on some of those technologies and some of the technologies that ITS is working on to transfer that data. So
the next slide really goes into what we've really kind of talked about already.
Yeah.
USB drives, they can't get to them because it's turned off in the RD gateway. And as John just pointed out, we're pointing to people on our network to use File Locker, which is a cloud service provided by the university. It's not that the files aren't stored, in a building in Arkansas or something. It's in the university itself, and that's what's most important to us at this point. And SOS, of course, they don't want your files stored in another country or even at risk being there. So we're trying to leverage what's available here at the university as far as transferring large files across the university and receiving larger files. And as you all know, USB devices can provide a huge security risk. Yep.
Do you ever have anyone who create, say, a bunch of CDs or USBs that they're going to hand out?
That's the Peggy asked if we ever have a user wanting to create a bunch of CDs or USB drives to hand out to people. And there are special instances where we do have one machine on our network that has everything, CD burning capabilities. It's a full-blown OS. They can get to it for scanning and all those strange peripherals. We do have one machine on our network for those type of things. Usually it's in a workroom closet or something like that. It's physical security and things like that. So there is that exception for those specific instances of use. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was the policies that we have in place that everybody has seen when they started working at Penn State. We really leverage those to kind of cover, and everybody should, to cover all the loopholes that you can get around with what we've provided people with. People could still use cloud storage in their email to put viruses and files on these laptops, but again, they're not supposed to be using their own accounts to do this sort of thing. Right.
Yeah, so we've locked down and controlled what we can, right? But we still know that people can do email attachments and do different things with them. So that's where we're saying, hey, we look at all the AD policies and we really have people sign off on those AD policies.
And speaking of AD policies, AD 23, that's used for the university's data. AD 20, computer network security, and we are leveraging those too. And FF14 is use of tangible assets, which actually states that personal use is generally not permitted at all. So, I mean, if you've seen those forms and you signed off on them, you shouldn't be doing those sort of things. People will still do them anyway, but we have to leverage those type of things. Yeah. One of the last policies, one of the things we want to talk about is we still practice LAU, which is least user access. I'm sure everybody does it. We don't have any administrator accounts on the machines on our network, on any of the virtual desktops on our network. If somebody needs something, they have to go through us. They can't install anything themselves. There are toolbars and extensions in Firefox and things like that, which can cause harm. But that's totally separate. And again, only approved software installations.
Yep. So, security benefits as we're starting to see them. I mean, we are really trying to leverage VDI as a view into your data. You log in, the data stays behind the firewall, and we're trying everything that we can so that and again, we're not trying to limit people on, when they have certain applications and all these things, we build those into the images, but we are really, really trying to keep everything behind the firewall. So, control over university's data, firewall, all USB clipboard redirections can be controlled from the gateway. We talked about that. No data is transferred from the endpoint device. That gets really, really nice because we've had to turn over a lot of things and a lot of devices, and we don't have to do that anymore. Now, we might have to turn over a VHD file, which is in the Microsoft world is basically your virtual desktop, or in the new world, it's VHDX is the new extension. And that's okay. They're prepared to take those if there's a litigation going on or security requests that person's data. We're going to give them one file, and they're prepared to look at those files.
So if someone is compromised, then that's the file that.
We do. And Jake, you want to talk about IDF at all?
Well. So yeah, the question was about IDF and what we're going to do with these VHD files. And the VHD file is basically the running operating system. Identifinder is installed on that. Identifinder will scan that as well. Yep. So yes, it is scanned. We would disconnect that VM from the network and scan it through Hyper-V, just using the console login. Yep.
So once you're running in a pool, you don't have to pool. You just can disconnect that one person.
Exactly.
How do you connect that? I mean, do you have to save that?
We haven't had one yet, and I don't think in our VDI environment that got compromised, or maybe we have.
We have had one.
Have one, okay.
And you can disconnect that one from the network.
And then do you copy it off and give them a new one, or keep that user working?
Right. We have a temp one running most of the time,
yeah.
And as we're building a new one and getting them set up, they can use the temp one. Now that's going to be a lot different in Server 2012 when you can just add one to the collection really quickly. Right now we're just leveraging what we have as our temporary machines. No,
well,
we've actually lost.
And the other thing too, in the new environment, so if one got compromised, we can go to our backups and go to the night before, pull back the user disk of that person. It's going to have everything. So if we know they got compromised that day, we can go back one day for their user disk and really get them back a day prior to. Yeah. That will be in the new environment. Yep.
And we're really talking about two separate things. We're like in 2008 R2, yes, we're scanning the VHD files, and we're not using user disks right now. But did you have a question?
Yep.
Actually, a question more further about the compromise. As for what you were saying, you said that virtual environments are like one-to-one for right now.
Correct.
But in the cluster environment where
it's the cluster virtual disks. It's hard to say. Like if we're going to have a collection, is that what you mean? Yeah. We'll have the collection set up, and the collection consists of 4 or 5 different VMs. Okay, one person logs in, connects to one of those machines. As soon as they log out, that machine reverts anyway. Now their user disk might have a compromise on it. It might have some malicious something other on it. And then we will take that user disk, we can attach it, because it's a VHD file, which you can actually mount inside of a Windows 2008 or Server 2012 operating system. And we can scan it from a disconnected machine that way.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Well, we've talked a lot about the gateway already. Again, it's connecting through SSL, HTTPS. The RDP client is configured internally on those thin clients. We just configure an RDP client to connect directly to their virtual machines. In Server 2012, we will be leveraging the gateway internally as well, so we can control USB use, clipboard use, so they can't copy anything down to the USB drives and things like that. It eliminates the use for a VPN client, and you don't need any additional software to get this kind of set up. It's all built into Server 2012 or Server 2008 R2. It's really easy to set up in Server 2012. There's just a wizard for it. So,
okay. So compromised systems, as we talk again, kind of on the whole security thing, managed by System Center Configuration Manager at this point. Gives us all the centralized management and reporting. Yeah, client gets compromised, a virtual desktop can be immediately disconnected, and we talked about the VHD files with the AVHD files. So, and we kind of figured some of that would come up prior to our slides, and that's okay. So,
oh. I went backwards.
Yeah, that's okay. User disks and virtual desktop revert, again, kind of talked about that earlier. User disk is going to kind of like the roaming profile, sitting on a file share, locked down to the systems and to the user. And then that pool, whatever they log into, just does a revert when they log off. Any changes to the OS drive are reverted, as we know. Fresh image upon next log on. Are we going to have some instances moving into the new environment where we're going to need someone to have a one-to-one? I'm sure. We haven't quite found it yet, and we're happy about that. But I'm sure we'll probably have an instance where someone's using some type of application or something that we really need to provide them with more of that one-to-one and not use the user disk or go to a pooled environment.
This is getting into more of a wrap-up part of the presentation. So what are the benefits of the virtual desktop infrastructure? All the RDS stuff is built into Server 2012 and Server 2008 R2. There's no additional software needed. You can centrally manage everything using the server manager that we talked about with the RSAT tools. Virtual desktop deployment is really simple. It's quick. It's easy. You build a gold image, you sysprep it, and say, use this for my collection.
How do you build the gold image? What do you use?
The question was, how do you build a gold image? And all you do is build a virtual machine the way you want it in Hyper-V. You choose how many processor cores you want, all the set. It's just like you're building an image for like, what was it? MDT, operating system development or deployment and configuration manager. So you just stage a virtual machine, an operating system, sysprep it, and then this actually will multiply that, I guess, or create a bunch of other ones based off of it. When you do that, I guess I should add, the ones that it creates from that base image, the size of them aren't as big. It uses a differencing disk for the others. So the main one is a little bit bigger. Say it's 20 gigs. The machines that come off of that are only like 6 gigs or so. So you don't need as much storage as you would with in 2008 R2 when you're doing one-to-ones. High availability. Of course, you can connect to your VDI anytime, anywhere. To give an example, we have some people flying out to California earlier this week, and at the end of the week, and they were connected from their airplane over the Wi-Fi in the airplane. Of course, the thin and the zero clients allow you to go green on your network. The ones that we're using only use 20 watts of power, as compared to like 200 watts of power for it. We're actually not using zero clients. We've tested a few. Right now, the XI3 boxes are considered thin clients.
Yeah, thin, right.
Just wondering what you thought of it.
Still haven't found one that we've tested that gives us the same efficiencies and speeds as the one that we picked, but again, always looking.
Yeah. And so the last two there, you can connect from any device like we talked about. And when you're using pooled VDIs, you're only worrying really about the gold images. There's maybe 3 or 4 for the different types of pools that you have. You update them on a regular schedule and rebuild your collections, which is as simple as like 2 clicks, and you're good to go.
So the other thing that's supported in, because people say, wow, you're actually going to stream Windows 8 desktops. I can't believe it. And honestly, if I was sitting out there too, I would want a lot of information about that too. We are doing it simply because when you take the entire Microsoft technologies and put it together with Server 2012, Windows 8 now uses UDP in addition to TCP. So streaming of the Windows 7 desktop from our 2008 R2 infrastructure across the WAN is not supported. Into this new environment, streaming the Windows 8 with the Server 2012 is supported. And we see why, because we are getting, you really can go to a YouTube video or whatever. People would be at home, bring up their virtual desktop, do all their work, business, and then if they really want to go to YouTube or something like that, they would just minimize their desktop and then just use the home machine they're on. They don't have to do that anymore. It truly has a good, really nice experience across any device that we're finding. So that, again, why we are, and the Windows 8 VMs, another key piece to this is they are streaming across, they're locked down. They're not getting just like the laptops, they're not getting the Metro style stuff. There's a few up there, like IE and something else, but they're really going right into their desktop and doing their work. So to the user, it really looks like almost a little bit different look to Windows 7. And then we'll go with the times. If things open up where it makes sense to take off the group policies that lock down those Metro style icons, that type, then that's what we'll do. We're just kind of flowing with the times. But we certainly didn't want to get into that, oh, let's stream Windows 8 and give them all this tiled stuff and just make our life a mess. So that's kind of why we're doing it and what we're seeing from doing it. Really, really, really good experiences that we control. Yes?
How do you get rid of those tiles?
Okay. Yeah, well, we can send you. We have a bunch of stuff.
At the end of the slide, you'll see our contact information. Send us an email. There's actually a PowerShell script that we use to get rid of the ones that are installed by default. It's actually just 2 lines. And we're also using group policy to turn the access to the store off. And then we're just removing that icon from the public start menu.
Can you do the tiles by? You can't do the tiles by?
You can't, no. Yeah, because of the way that we're removing them, you have to remove them out of the gold image. They actually have to be uninstalled. You can't use group policy to uninstall them. I mean, you can run PowerShell scripts in group policy to do that, but you only have to do it once in the gold image. So that's the way we're doing it.
Good.
I think next is you here.
Okay, so just to, again, a little bit more to wrap up, the client, we're standardizing, so they come in, we're standardizing on kind of the XI3 for now, and not worrying about all kinds of different devices being attached to the network. Clustered desktops on the corporate network, finally using more of what we pay for, right? So there's all that RAM and all the stuff on the back end that we've never really utilized. And now we're finally getting around to being able to use dynamic memory for all the virtual machines. I mean, actually using that 128 gigs that's sitting on the host.
Can I just add real quick?
Yep.
That's another big thing of using the server core, is that the core operating system doesn't use as many resources, so it can be used for the virtual machines and your virtual desktop infrastructure.
Yep, core has been a big player in terms of not putting things out there that we just don't need, like all that GUI stuff that comes if you were to load Server 2012 data center or GUI. Our operational expenses, we are seeing reduced because we're limiting the amount of servers that we need, SANs, and again, with the technology and what has to be done there. And extending the use of our existing desktops, which we've had, and then we're migrating to the new ones. So, some lessons learned. Well, there's actually been a ton of lessons learned. When we first started out, we had to say, what is our goal? We started going off on all these different tangents, and we just got ahead of ourselves. And you just can't lock yourself down to one thing. We have found in our infrastructure, you have to be open-minded all the time, because when you really think you're going to standardize on something, something else comes along. So again, with the new software and with group policies and PowerShell and things like that, we're able to do some of these things and then kind of have control of those policies and release them as time goes on. If we want to incorporate some of the Metro style stuff into Windows 8, that type of thing. Yeah, backups and snapshots. I mean, who likes backups? It's just, we used to do snapshotting for everything, and we realized that's certainly overkill. So it's nice just a user disk out on a file share, and that's really all we're concerned about in terms of the employees' own, what do you call it, what they're doing to the desktop, how they want it set up. That's certainly separate from the file server that we are backing up, of course, SQL data, etc. Finally, standardizing on our client. People have heard me talk before. We've been a part of a TAP 1 program. It's just Microsoft asking you to test some of their systems. That's been a very, very good program because we've actually have access to some of the top engineers in Microsoft when you agree to test out some of their products. And so for us, it's been really good. We didn't have to place that call. The other thing that's not on here is, we've really minimized the third-party software that we've had to purchase. Since we're using the Microsoft realm, if we have a problem, it's actually been quite some time, but we place a call to Microsoft for the $250 or whatever it is. That certainly beats some of the maintenance costs that I used to have, just even running Commvault and some of these other types of software. And I know Commvault's a backup software, but some of the maintenance costs and some of the software and hardware that we use is very, very expensive. We've really minimized those costs by just staying in this environment, and it's worked for us. And and we talked a little bit about how the Windows 8 has improved the efficiency into the new environment.
This is about our last slide here. I think maybe we should open it up for questions though, since there's only 5 minutes left till 4:30.
So just to wrap up, we're only two. The people that Jake and I take care of, we're migrating to UCS. So that's our first endeavor. We're hoping to have that done the next couple months, and then right after that, we have this infrastructure ready to go. And we've had testers out there, so we're ready to go with that. And then, so we'll start migrating the next 3 or 4 months, people into this new system. As Jake said, questions, open it up. Any burning thoughts?
If you can't think of anything now, there's our contact information on that slide there. Feel free to send any of us an email. We have lots of documentation on how we're setting things up.
This is just our environment, what we've been doing. And again, the folks that across the campuses that are also doing VDI, I talk a lot with a lot of those folks who are doing some fantastic things. And we're excited to talk with them and what works for them and what doesn't. So it's really Penn State, it's a team effort between all of us, and that's what we like. Again, are there questions that we can entertain or go back to slides or anything like that? Anything out there in Adobe? We absolutely appreciate your time. We appreciate your time. Absolutely reach out to us for anything. We're happy to give you a test VM or just come over and see what we're doing if any of this helps moving forward. So thank you.